Hi everyone, this is Ishika Kesarwani. I welcome you all to the Tech Bit podcast. Today we are having Pratik Gauri. He's the founder and CEO of Fire. Pratik Gauri is a serial Indian social entrepreneur, investor, public speaker, and writer widely known as the creator of the fifth industrial revolution. We can first start with your introduction.
Thanks, Ashika, for having me, and thanks for such a warm and kind intro. So I've been promoting the idea of a fifth industrial revolution since the past 15 years to prove the thesis that you can actually make more money if you do good to the world. So the more good you do, the more money you make. Because when I started my entrepreneurial journey about 15 years back, I was 16, and I realized that people are either focused on profits on one side, or the rich and the wealthy are talking about charity, but I did not find enough people who are working at the intersection of both these pieces. So I ended up building 8 businesses. Fire is the ninth business that I founded. All the 8 businesses have been in the space of fifth industrial revolution, so trying to prove the thesis at a large scale that you can actually make more money if you do good to the world, and both of them actually go hand in hand, and that sustainability is going to define profitability in the years to come. So my businesses have been in the spaces of edutech, health tech, climate tech, renewables, and now it's a blockchain company. um, and I've been able to kind of impact tens of millions of people, generate tens of millions of dollars through this whole piece. And I represented the country, and my companies at World Economic Forum Davos, Core World Forum Oxford, the Nobel Peace Prize Forum Oslo, the United Nations General Assembly. So I did all of that, and then I found myself at an inflection point during COVID where I was like, how do I scale the idea of a fifth industrial revolution to 1 billion people so that we can enable financial inclusion? And so there are about 1.5 billion people who don't have access to credit and banking. How can you basically get them involved in the finance systems? And there are so many social problems that still continue to exist, whether it's clean water and sanitation, whether it's gender equality, or whether it's basic social problems. How can you basically solve those social problems through sustainability? So that's been my life journey in a nutshell. The end overarching goal of my life is to impact 1 billion people through the companies that I've founded, and that's the journey I've been on, which is of course called the fifth industrial revolution.
Okay, thank you. So, what's exactly Fire? What does it work for? And how did you come up with this startup idea? And would you like to tell us about the founding members?
Yeah, so fire, as again, it's 5IRE, it stands for the fifth industrial revolution. We started the company about a year back, and the reason we started it was because, as I said, I wanted to impact 1 billion people. I was already able to impact tens of millions of people, so I wanted to scale the concept. So I realized that if you embed sustainability into blockchain, and if you build an infrastructure, so think of fire as like, so Google, what Google did to web 1, or what Facebook did to web 2, we're trying to do similar stuff in web 3, but in a way which curates the world in a direction where it's going to not only be more abundant, but it's also going to be more green and more sustainable. So we came up with the idea of fire, to prove the thesis at large that you can actually make more money if you do good to the world by creating a web3 infrastructure, or a blockchain layer 1, where any decentralized protocol that uses our ecosystem, or uses it's the world's first sustainable blockchain ecosystem. Anybody who uses the ecosystem and builds on top of it ends up contributing to the fifth industrial revolution, and ends up contributing to the fact that we're going to transition the world from the current age of for profit in the age of fourth industrial revolution to for benefit in the age of fifth industrial revolution. So ideally transitioning the whole world from for profit to for benefit, so transitioning the world economy from a for profit economy to a for benefit economy, and the overarching goal being to impact 1 billion people by solving social problems, like enabling financial inclusion for about 1.5 billion people who are left out of banking, enabling gender equality. So what we did, I have 2 more co-founders, and our team is about 100 people now, more than 100. We are more than 100 member team, but we are 3 co-founders. We came up with fire about, as I said, a year back, and we've patented the technology. It's patent pending. That what we've done is we've come up with our own consensus. So any blockchain is governed by a consensus mechanism. So we have invented a new form of consensus called proof of benefit, where what we've done is we have embedded the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, the 17 global goals of sustainable development. So, for instance, health tech, climate tech, renewable, gender inequality, and all of that into the consensus. And we have scraped data from about 650 ESG sources, so environmental, social governance sources, into the consensus. And as I said, if anybody now ends up building a protocol on top of FIRE, whether it's a government using the protocol, whether it's a Fortune 500, then they are financially rewarded and incentivized for following sustainable practices. So, for instance, if you use geothermal and I use coal, then you end up making more money than I do. So, it's a financial reward mechanism through blockchain layer one ecosystem that we've developed, which will move the world from for profit to for benefit, and in the end impact a billion people and solve all social problems that continue to exist and plague us, using the Web3 infrastructure that we have built. So that's ideally in a nutshell of what FIRE is. The ecosystem, we have our own layer one chain, we have our own NFT metaverse marketplace, we have our own venture capital fund, we have our own digital university, which is trying to educate people about blockchain, create more awareness for mostly young kids in their 20s. So we're sponsoring hackathons across the world, and the end goal being to train them on Rust and Substrate, which are languages used in the blockchain space, and then bring them into the workforce, and then so that they can also be a part of the fifth industrial revolution that we're trying to create.
Okay, so you also talked about sustainable blockchain. So how does it goes hand in hand with that, and how's the future scope of this?
So if you see, for instance, any other layer one chain, they're mostly using types of consensus which have been very prevalent. So one is proof of work, the other is proof of stake. So in proof of work, you basically spend more computational power to get validation, or to get validate a block, which basically means you have to spend more energy. So you can never be more energy efficient in proof of work. That's why it can never be sustainable. If you use proof of stake, for instance, which is again another consensus mechanism, you have to stake more money, which basically means it takes you back to the traditional finance problem that the rich get richer, the poor still stay poor. So it still doesn't solve the problem of financial inclusion. So as I said, the way we have embedded sustainability is we have tokenized the 17 global goals of sustainable development. We have scraped data from 650 ESG sources and come up with the world's first mathematical model, which not only measures sustainability but also financially rewards sustainable behavior to every stakeholder that is involved. So which basically means you are making the world go to a place where sustainability is going to define profitability, and anybody who wants to be sustainable is making more money, which is a big change, or a big paradigm shift in the way the whole economy works, because current economy has been mostly working on a for profit paradigm. We want to move it to a for benefit paradigm. So that's what we're trying to do. And when you ask, so sustainability and blockchain, as I said, will definitely go hand in hand in our case, because anybody who's more sustainable ends up making more money. That's how the blocks are rewarded, or that's how the blocks are validated. So it's an ecosystem that we have built which will actually reward sustainability in a financial way, so that everybody is motivated to use sustainable practice. And when I use the word sustainability, it doesn't only mean climate. It basically means that we're going to expedite progress towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, which basically means goals like health or climate or renewables or clean water or clean sanitation or solar or wind or any of those pieces. We're going to expedite progress towards everything. So that's the way we define sustainability, because we consider it pretty synonymous to the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay, so for the sustainable blockchain industry, how do you think that the market size is, and how has a research and development team came up for making the market for fire ready for future?
So the market is definitely very huge. These are two of the biggest spaces. So it's like blockchain on one side is one of the only technologies that the world has ever seen, which has the ability to transform the way the whole world works, because it has the power to bring it has the ability to bring the power back to the community in a decentralized way, which basically means that every human, all the 6.5 billion people, can be a part of the entire revolution, which basically never was possible before. I mean, of course, I can talk about 100 advantages of using blockchain, but you can mostly Google them, you'll find most of them. So I don't need to talk about them because it's immutable, it's more secure, transparent, blah blah blah. But on the other side, we're working on two sectors. So one is blockchain, of course. The other is sustainability. Sustainability, as I said, is going to define profitability in the future. You've already seen how Tesla was built and how the valuations went up during COVID. So it's already started to take shape. After COVID, actually, people realize more than ever the power of sustainability. They realize the power of health, which again is, as I said, sustainability doesn't only mean climate, it means all social factors. So you people have already started to realize that if they set up a startup which is selling juice, it can end up becoming more profitable than selling, say, a cola. So people have started to realize that all these businesses are going to define profitability. So it's one of the most emerging sectors. The space is huge. With Fire, of course, there's a huge market, because we are solving the most expensive problem the world currently has, which is to make the world sustainable and at the same time make it more abundant. So you're working at the intersection of two spaces, which are the biggest spaces the world has, which is sustainability and blockchain. So you're using basically Web3 to transform the way the world works and curate the world in a way that it will be not only sustainable but it will also be abundant. So if you talk about these, of course, they're two of the biggest spaces. The market sizes obviously runs into trillions of dollars, not just billions of dollars, and both those markets. So imagine working at the intersection. So of course we have a huge potential. Of course, we're the first movers or the first players in the space who's built something which is working at the intersection of blockchain and sustainability. And that's why a lot of the large players which have not currently embraced blockchain are continuing, are now agreeing to partner with us, which can be governments or Fortune 500 companies or family offices, because with that we have the ability to actually impact a billion people.
Okay, so how is fire transforming the carbon market right now?
So there is so look, as I said, carbon markets. So if you see the whole supply chain, basically we are trying to move the world to create circular economy, for instance, where we are trying to so in blockchain, the beautiful thing is that because everything resides on the chain, you have the ability through smart contracts to actually monitor everything from source to beneficiary, and also incentivize stakeholders in between. So which basically means you end up reducing a lot of waste, you end up reducing a lot of cost, you increase efficiency highly effectively. It's more cost effective, it's very very transparent because it's on a distributed ledger. So any third party can actually look at it. So what we are doing currently is we are working with a lot of companies. For instance, we just did a partnership with Intex, which is one of the phone manufacturers of India, to bring the supply chain on Fire blockchain. So we're doing a lot of stuff, and I think the way we are reducing the carbon footprint, for instance, is the consensus mechanism actually takes into account everything which is sustainable, which basically means that you can only validate a block if you are sustainable. If you're not, you won't be able to validate a block, which also means you won't be able to make money. So if your carbon footprint is low, you end up having there's a higher probability of you ending up making more money, which basically is financial rewards for anybody which is following sustainability. So that's how we are kind of transforming the whole piece. We are trying to encourage zero waste. Through this, we are also encouraging, as I said, we're solving all social problems. It's not just limited to climate, or it's not just limited to reducing the carbon footprint. It's not just limited to solving the problem of, say, gender equality. We have a bunch of use cases. We are working on smart policing, we're working on predictive policing, we're working on land registration, we're working on arm licensing, we're working on getting all the data records on the blockchain. We are working on getting the FIRs, for instance, on the blockchain, which basically means it becomes immutable, so it becomes more transparent. So a lot of use cases currently we are working on, and they're mostly working with we work mostly working with large scale players, because we want to encourage a lot of public private partnerships in this case to create an impact at a very large scale, because our end goal is to impact a billion people.
How did you really come up with so many use cases in this industry?
So we have a pretty big research team now. So we have about 55 people in the technology team. We have about 10 people in the research team. The total team size, as I said, is more than 100 people now. So a research team basically writes research papers which are innovative ways to solve social problems, which are basically working at the intersection of blockchain and sustainability. So we have about 14 research papers out already in public. One of our research papers is actually just published on the Ethereum website, for instance, which is what about mapping the DAO ecosystem. How do you create a decentralized autonomous organization? How do you map it? And then how do you basically give the power back to the community and make sure you solve financial inclusion? So there are a lot of use cases that, and for every use case we have a research paper. So the team actually writes research papers. So we're pretty big and a very able and a good research team. We also have a very good technology team who ends up executing everything that is being written in the research. So yeah, that's what we are building. That's what we are currently focused on. Our USP in a big way, for instance, is innovation, is the ability to solve social problems using web3 technology. So you will find we want to solve a lot of social problems basically. So we have all the use cases I mentioned are basic problems that continue to exist and plague us. So we want to solve all those problems using the power of web3, and that's what we're currently building.
So, how have you been managing your team and making sure that it's a future driven team?
So so we are, as I said, so we basically, we are very choosy on the people we onboard. So for every person who's kind of inducted into the team, there are about 1,000 applications we are getting for every person who's recruited. uh, so we are very because our team is actually the biggest asset that the company has, because the company is current, like the biggest USP, as I mentioned, is innovation, is our secret sauce is also our consensus, which is again what was designed by the research team, which is very innovative. So we are continuing to evolve, continuing to develop innovative solutions to solve any social problem that you continue to see in the world. We will want to solve all those problems using blockchain. So anybody who joins any of the teams goes through a heavy induction process. So we basically want to have people with us who not only are not who are not joining us just for money, but who are joining us because they believe in sustainability. They believe that sustainability is going to define profitability. They believe in the concept of a fifth industrial revolution, and they want to contribute to it, because money is a byproduct. As I said, sustainability is going to define profitability. So if you work on it, you'll definitely end up making money, but that should not be the prime focus. So those are the kind of people we have. They're highly motivated. We have people from a lot of geographies. So we have people from India, UAE, we have people from US, we have people from Europe and the in-house team currently is more than 100, but then we have a lot of extended arms because we work with a lot of consulting firms. We also work with a lot of external stakeholders, so total size would end up being more than 200. So and it's less than 1 year since we started. So a lot of people have actually joined the revolution that we're trying to create, and it's we are very grateful for the fact that they're all supporting us in this.
That's really good. Would you like to tell us about the associations and partnerships of FIRE?
So we have a lot of them. We are currently working with the City of Alliance in the state of Nebraska in the United States of America on smart policing. We are also working with the Muzaffarnagar Police, for instance, in India around smart policing. We're also working with Intex on supply chain automation. We are working with a lot of Fortune 500 companies. We are working with a lot of family offices. We are also working, for instance, we have an MOU with the Nigerian agriculture government to bring them on blockchain. So we are working with basically three stakeholders: governments, Fortune 500s, and family offices. So those are the three pieces that we are currently working on.
Okay, so like you've been through a very long journey now, and there must be a lot of stuff that you've been through, and you have created such a big impact in the world now, and you created so many startups. So, what would you like to share about your journey with all the listeners of this podcast? Your learnings from from your life till now.
I think I would just say the biggest learning that I've had is the ability to never give up. Because when you are an entrepreneur, when you're trying to build something, and if it's innovative, it's world changing, you will face a lot of resistance. The resistance can come from your parents, the resistance can come from your family, the resistance can come from your relatives, it can also come from your friends. Starting up with them, and then it also there's a lot of resistance and inertia that the society puts on you because you're doing something which is very different. So I think you basically have to never give up. That's, I think, the first one. If you're because there will be a lot of challenges, but if you embrace all those challenges, that there is a lot of success also that follows. I think the second big one, so I have two. One is never give up, and the second I would say is you should always believe in yourself, because the world will only believe if you believe in yourself. The biggest problem is a lot of people lose faith in themselves because they've had a failed startup or two startups. I know so many people who's tried starting up a business and they failed, and then they went back to their traditional 9 to 5 jobs, and they said, we can't do startup because it failed. But look, the point here is that if it's you'll have to keep at it, you'll have to believe in yourself, and if you don't believe in yourself, the world is never going to believe in you. So if you believe in yourself, the world is slowly will start to believe in you. So it will take years, it's not just months, it will take years to do that, but then it's very rewarding, and not because of you end up making money or any other thing. It's more rewarding because you're doing what you like to do, so you're basically following your passion. And I think that's been the I've always wanted to build something around my passion. In fact, I guide all entrepreneurs to start their business around their passion thing. So if you love food, then why don't you start a restaurant business? So if you like playing piano, then you can start a business around that. If you like playing guitar, you can start something around that. If you like to drive cars, why don't start a business around that? So that's been the theory of the businesses that I've started. So I was always passionate about solving social problems using innovation. So most of my businesses have been around using technology to solve social problems. And the concept of fifth industrial revolution came in very early when I started promoting the idea that you can actually make more money if you do good to the world. So that's been my journey. But I would highly advise, if any entrepreneur, they follow two things, then I think there's a lot of success that they'll get.
That's very inspiring. On that note, we can end today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining. It was a very insightful and inspiring podcast. And thank you to all the listeners who joined us today. And also stay tuned because we're going to come up with many more podcasts like this. Have a great day.
Thank you.